Look at the latest democratic actions by Israel, right? They sent Israeli forces into the West Bank, and they raided the offices of 7 NGOs. They took all of their equipment and then left these notes on the doors declaring them banned permanently. Right? So, again, let me explain this. The Israelis basically invaded Palestine. I mean, they invaded it a long time ago, but they go into the West Bank, which is, officially speaking, that's not Israel. And then they go and shut down some of the most important civil society groups and organizations in Palestine and call them terrorist organizations. And I want to show you the timeline here because this is so outrageous. A few months ago, November of last year, they discover Pegasus on these lawyers' phones, on people who work at these organizations. Again, Pegasus is it's a cyber weapon. It's a piece of spyware that's made by an Israeli company, and they sell it to governments everywhere, and they use it to hack iPhones. Completely invasive, right? It can track you in real time, take your photos, everything. And so people working at these very 7 organizations like Ad-Damir, Al-Haq, they found Israeli spyware on their phones. So that means they were being surveyed without, obviously illegally, and all of their contacts, their photos, God knows where they were uploaded and what was done with them. The Israelis officially declare these organizations terrorist organizations. And I want to break this down to you because, for example, this one, Ad-Damir. Do you know what this organization does? It's just like they say, we give legal support to Palestinian political prisoners, document their cases, and advocate their rights internationally. So last year, I interviewed someone who works at Ad-Damir. It's on the channel, by the way, if you want to watch it. And this is one of the most insightful videos that you'll ever watch about what's happening in Palestine, because we talked a lot about administrative detention, which is basically some old British colonial law that the Israelis, conveniently kept because they go and arrest Palestinians. They don't tell them what they're being charged with. They don't even tell their lawyers what they're being charged with. It's classified. It's all done in a military court. They're kept for 6 months at a time, and it can be renewed indefinitely. So you end up with people who've been in prison for 7 years, and they come out and they still have no clue why they were sent to prison. And so Ad-Damir just provides support to these people. But the Israelis, they say, oh no, you're a terrorist group. You know why they say that? Because the Israelis don't want people finding this shit out. Because when you understand what Israel is doing, all of this nonsense that they like to say and their whole sparkle just vanishes. Say, oh, we're the only democracy in the Middle East. Democracy? Wow, I didn't know you just randomly arrest people in a military court and keep them in prison for years without telling them in a democracy. That's amazing. And now this stuff, like shutting down civil rights groups and organizations and civil society groups, very democratic. I just want to show you some of the names of these organizations. And I say names because not only so that you know which groups were banned, but you can tell or the nature of their work. Okay, so the first one is Ad-Damir, which I just talked about. Al-Haq is the second one. Haq means you're right. Right? Bison Center for Research and Development. And then the next one is Defense for Children International in Palestine. After that, we have health work committees. We also have the Union of Agricultural Work Committees. We also have the Union of Palestinian Women's Committees. Apparently, these are all terrorist groups. Oh my God. Shut them down. Wow. I mean, even with this terrorist designation, many European countries, they weren't having it. This is from July of, this is from 12th of July, last month. This is a joint statement from the German, French, Danish, Belgian, Irish, Italian, and Dutch, Spanish, and Swedish foreign ministries. They released this statement saying that, Israel designating these 6 Palestinian civil society organizations as terrorist organizations is ridiculous, right? They say the designations need to be assessed carefully and extensively. No substantial information was received from Israel that would justify reviewing our policy towards the 6 Palestinian NGOs. When you have all these European countries telling Israel to cut this out, I mean, they rarely ever criticize Israel. So for them to actually put out this joint statement is very powerful, right? It really shows you how far off into the deep end the Israelis are going. The Palestinian Prime Minister visited Al-Haq's office and said that this is not only an NGO, but this is also a State of Palestine institution. Therefore, as long as they work within the law, we will stand solid with them. And keep in mind, at some of these NGOs, the Israelis, they didn't just leave notes there. Like I told you, they confiscated all the equipment. Again, it's not the first time they do this. And they put metal doors up so that you couldn't even get inside. Like, you couldn't even get back in. So, they were coming this morning and trying to get rid of these barricades that the Israelis have put up. I love this last line in this article because, it's so obvious, but you have to put it in there. So analysts speculated that Israel had attacked the groups because they were becoming increasingly effective at exposing Israel's repression of Palestinian people. Yeah. Here's the United Nations. This was in December last year. It's the same MO, right? It's everything that you see in Israel, everything you see in the United States, everything you see in the UK. This is really, when you properly dissent, when you tell the truth, they show their true colors. And then they're no different from the people they're criticizing. And in many aspects, they're even worse. Right? Because they're able to convince the world that they're otherwise. Sorry, man. These practices, if any other country did them, there would be even more condemnation. The fact the UN is condemning it and the Europeans are condemning it really shows you how out of hand they've become. And I want to tell you another thing. This is on the Ed Lamir's YouTube channel. And this is a video they uploaded many years ago. It doesn't even have that many views. But I watched it, and it was actually in 2 parts, and it was just there's no commentary, there's nothing. There's just a camera, and they're just talking to all these different people, all these Palestinians that have been in administrative detention. That stuff is gonna make you cry. I showed it to you here a couple of times, right? Like, you have so many people who spent 9 years in prison, 7 years in prison. Their brother was in prison. Their mother was in prison. Their son was in prison. Entire families that have been sent to jail, and they do not even know why. They're always talking about Ukrainian sovereignty and Ukraine's borders, and okay, that's great. What about Palestine? They're not only occupying Palestine, but the little crumbs that they leave to the Palestinians, right? Like the West Bank, they just send forces in randomly to shut down NGOs, and that's already one of the lesser crimes compared to the other crap. Unfortunately, the extent of the crimes is much larger than that. The scope is much larger, but they don't respect Palestinians' borders. They didn't respect Palestinians at all. It's disgusting, really, and it's here's another photograph. This is, again, I suspect some of these diplomats that came out were from the same countries that we saw in the joint statement, from Belgium and Denmark and so on. And as long as, they continue to work with these groups, that's good. Because, it's really becoming a problem for the Israelis. So many people are waking up to what Israel does and what Israel is, and it's reminiscent mostly of May in last year, because you had people protesting in so many more cities, so many more countries than you would see normally, and that's definitely tied to this kind of work, where they document Israeli crimes, they document political prisoners, they try to give them help. When people are seeing this on social media, when they're learning about this, it just opens their eyes. And no wonder the Israelis want to shut them up. Telling the truth it makes you terrorist.